had not hit record. Sorry, Mal.
Sorry, Kim.
What's up, Trainiacs? This is take 2 of the podcast.
Triathlon Taren is in trouble right now.
Covering the Half-Ironman World Championship Pro Race. We just recorded 9 minutes of gold, and I forgot to hit play. Record. Jet lag. I'm gonna call jet lag.
You only get one more day of that.
That's it.
Once next week starts,
done.
You are finished.
Had enough.
I've had enough of this jet lag.
So, NTK, you're back after about 6 weeks away of no podcasting.
I didn't go anywhere. I was just here. You were gallivanting around the globe.
You were feeding the dogs, doing the important stuff.
That is the only important job.
Exactly. The most important job.
If Gracie and Petey go away, that's it.
Well, Gracie's top dog around here. Everyone should know that we originally bought the house for Gracie because she stopped pooping and peeing on the balcony that we had in our condo.
She didn't just straight defecate on the balcony. We had her trained.
To pee and poop in a kiddie pool that we filled with about 40 pounds of cat litter.
It was a brilliant solution when we were living in a condo with a balcony and didn't have a yard. But once we had her, somebody babysat her while we were away, and she realized, oh, wait a minute.
This sucks.
That nobody else, I can just go in the yard. And now I have to come back home and go in this stupid kiddie pool? Oh, she was not pleased.
Yeah, she did not do that for very long. So it was about a month that we were like, oh, okay, it's time for an actual house. So we bought a house for Gracie, and then we bought a dog for Gracie, and that's how Pete came into our life.
Petey.
Yeah.
Pete.
So we are talking today about the pro race of the Half-Ironman World Championships with the matchup that happened between Javier Gomes, Jan Frodeno, Alistair Brownlee, and then on the women's side with Daniela Ryf being so dominant, but I think probably for the first time this year being challenged by Lucy Charles, or really anyone for that matter. I think that this is going to go down as probably one of the best half-Ironman races that has ever happened.
And it makes me so excited for Kona.
Yeah. Oh, there's going to be some good stuff in Kona. So we've discussed this already. Explain how you followed along. We discussed this on
the podcast that didn't get recorded. How I followed along. Well, you didn't know this, but I followed along while I was sleeping.
Ooh, talented.
So what happened was I was preparing to stay up. Of course, there's 7-hour time difference. South Africa, Port Elizabeth is 7 hours ahead of Winnipeg. So your race was starting, well, technically the men's race started at 7:38, but you were going off at 8.
That was the pros.
Right. And you were going off at 8:03.
I think the pro men were 7:30, and then the first hand cycle wave was 7:38.
Okay.
And then I was 8:02.
8:02. So I was going to stay up until, 1 a.m. until it started. And at around 10:30, I started flagging because our typical bedtime for both of us is somewhere in and around 9:30 p.m.
Well, yours, I'm like 8:30
you
lately.
get into bed, yeah. So anyway, I started to get really tired and nod off, and I thought, why am I staying up? Like, what's the point? I can't communicate with you. All I can do is watch you on the Ironman tracker and watch your little TG icon moves very slowly along the map. Am I going to do that for 6 hours or 4.5 hours? No.
It moves very fast, by the way.
Yeah. Relatively speaking, it does not. So anyway, I decided to go to bed, and then I had my ringer on, and you texted me at 5 a.m. Winnipeg time saying, woohoo. And I woke up, and I actually quickly checked the Ironman tracker and got your time before you had your official time. So I was still able to contribute even though I slept through your race.
Exciting.
What else could I do?
Nail biting.
Mm-hmm. So that's how I followed the race.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I watched the recap video that you and Mel put together, that actually
mostly
Mel put together.
Mel, basically, because I was either resting for the race while the women were racing or doing my race. So
yes,
this is the first time that I've left Mel entirely to her own devices
to
shoot 2 races because...
Yeah, the pros and you.
The pros and me,
yeah.
Which, is the day before I was like, whoa, I kind of gave you a crap hand here, Mel. Whoa. As we were timing when the men were going to be coming across transitions and when I was going to be coming across transitions, it was like, Oh, you have a very tough job ahead of you.
She did a spectacular job.
She did.
Oh my goodness. That video, Mel's best work, one of the best videos on the channel. I think second only to last year's Kona
Was
video.
good.
But yeah, it was spectacular. So I did watch that and love that and brought it to life. Brought it all to life.
You're welcome.
So we'll start by talking about Port Elizabeth as the location.
Yep.
I think, well, I don't know. I wasn't there, so I do have some questions. I only know the tidbits that you fed me about what it was like there. But there seemed to be, I don't want to call it controversy, but there were people questioning the decision to hold it there.
I don't know. I didn't hear a ton of that from the athletes. I think just in general, it was a bit of a risky move by Ironman. If I was Ironman, all week I would have been afraid of the potential for danger. I would have been afraid of the weather because it was their winter there.
Well, coming out of their winter, the beginning of their spring.
Beginning of their spring. So the Sunday and the Monday before the race, it was 8 degrees Celsius, about 46 degrees Fahrenheit, 50 kilometer an hour, 30 mile an hour winds.
Rain.
And I didn't go outside for 2 days.
And you were texting me, like, I don't want to say panicked, but panicked, saying, I think they might have to cancel the race.
They're going to call it. There's no way people will race in this.
And I literally thought, can you imagine all the people that spent bazillion dollars on those flights, because that is not a cheap flight from North America, and all the hours traveling and everything else, only to potentially have it canceled? I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, and I don't know what goes into these decisions, but I can't imagine why Ironman would pick a location with so many variables that could have gone wrong.
Well, and the danger aspect of it.
Oh, yes.
So that would be more the big concern. I mean, the weather triathletes shouldn't always expect 20 degrees Celsius days and no wind and perfectly flat courses.
But you can pick locations that have those. Maybe not perfectly flat courses, but we know what weather is.
And it ended up being a very nice day for both the men and the women.
Yeah.
But luckily, yeah. But that's a variable. And then the second variable was the danger. Like South Africa, dangerous place, straight up.
Yeah,
it's
that's
place.
well known. There's no, I mean, people understand that. They know the reasons. There's, we don't need to get into that. It's well known why it's a dangerous place in the world. I have a friend actually who I worked with who moved to Canada from South Africa because it was so dangerous. She's trying to get her family to move from there because you don't have safety. And so to go into a place, you and Mel, with an expensive bike like you have, and all of these expensive bikes and all the gear and equipment that people were bringing to that area, I mean, like, hold up a sign and say, hey, come rob us, almost, right? It's like, oh yeah, that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. Well, there were a few stories that made me really question why they selected that as the race. And it started in the Johannesburg airport, where they wouldn't let me check in. I had about a 5-hour delay in Johannesburg, and they wouldn't let me check my bags because they said, do you have any electronics in there? And I was like, yeah, I've got a drone and some camera gear. And they're like, oh, that'll get stolen if it's sitting in the terminal for that long. And like, you guys are supposed to be the safe guys. So there was that. There was basically just every single house. The compound that we were staying in had 6-foot fences, 3 feet of electric fence over top of it. And then we were still told to padlock ourselves into our room every single night.
Heather told me, I was going to say Heather Wertel.
She was staying in the compound with me.
Well, this scared the crap out of me because you went on a ride, told her, hey, I rode up this place where there's these pretty bushes. And she's like, don't go there. People jump out of the bushes to rob you.
She said we were told not to ride that way because people would jump out of the bushes. And I was like, oh, those bushes were beautiful. That's too bad.
Thank God nothing happened.
And there was a time that we went out for dinner in a restaurant area, and we were standing just outside of a series of awnings waiting for our Uber. And somebody came over and said, oh, don't stand there. Stand closer to the exit of these restaurants. And it was like 10 feet of difference is the difference between potentially being stabbed and mugged and being safe. And this was a nice area, nice houses, where earlier in the day people were telling us it was beautiful. So like we looked on a crime map, and I wanted to see the heat map of where the dangerous areas were in Port Elizabeth, and the entire city was red, maximum danger. It ended up working out okay. I didn't hear any issues leading into that race whatsoever. I didn't hear a single person that had an issue, thankfully. It's just something that makes me think like, there was the potential for disaster. That's Port Elizabeth.
So
beautiful place. Everyone was quite nice.
the Expo and Registration. What was the Expo like there?
Expo was really good. Really good. Everyone was in a central location. Registration, they did this new thing with, it was like I think they called it the biometric feedback. So they took your photo and then took your fingerprints. And instead of having to go and sign this thing and sign that thing and then sign this thing and this waiver and that waiver and then pick up this and then go over and get your card and take that card and go over to the next station, it was, I think, start to finish 6 minutes. With, I don't know if this was a new system or it was just a Port Elizabeth system, but they nailed the registration there.
I would imagine it would be
super impressed.
Well, I mean, Ironman's running the show, so I'm sure it's a new Ironman thing, right? It wouldn't just be.
Well, as far as I understand,
organizing committee.
As far as I understand it, Ironman runs every single show.
Yeah,
and they bring all of the equipment to every single race, and the city and the local organizing committee themselves are really only responsible for supplying volunteers and shutting down roadways with the local authorities, and then Ironman takes over everything. So I have to assume it's their stuff. If it was or wasn't, whoever did it, kudos. That was a delight.
So you went there with two purposes. Obviously, racing was one, but covering the actual race was the other. So you had this dual-pronged assignment. Mel, of course, was there to be the ever-trusty videographer. But you were doing both. And so I know how tired and stressed, maybe not stressed, but like a little bit stressed going into this you were, because you had so much on your plate. You had 4-hour training days, with all of your self-care and maintenance stuff that you do to make sure,
Self-care.
Self-care.
my pedicures, my manicures.
There are more things than that to self-care.
Keep myself pretty for the people.
Sauna sessions, your stretching, your glute med work, your all that stuff, your meditation, your breathing, blah, 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 blah. You were very stressy before you left. And so you had to balance both of those things, because covering the races, and interesting that the women's race was on a different day than the men's race, because they don't do that at Kona. It's all in one big day. Mm-hmm. So that was a very interesting way to do it. And nice, because that meant the women's race got its full due. It got full attention on its day. Men's race got its full attention on its day. So I kind of like that. Also
allows them to have more athletes, because Kona is completely maxed out. They're literally out of space to have any more athletes. And I think that is
the course or in the town?
The transition area. Like the pier that Kona is on can only support a certain amount of people. And I think that it's maxed out at 2,200, where it's basically going to stay. And in total, Port Elizabeth had, I think it was 4,600. Because there was huge areas, and then splitting it into 2 days, there were 2,600 men, 1,900 women, something like that.
Some interesting logistics they had to deal with then. But anyway, so you were doing two things. You were covering the race. You were doing pre-podcasts. I mean, you recorded some podcasts that people will hear coming up in the next few weeks here on the show, as well as doing a lot of video work, providing a daily video as always, interviewing pros, talking to pros, doing all your usual handshaking,
a meetup,
baby kissing,
awesome meetup. That was fun.
Hanging out with the folks at Ventum, et cetera, et cetera. So how did you balance the two purposes?
Going there 10 days early allowed me to recover for a few days before any of the media stuff happened. So I built in a few recovery days ahead of time. And then what we did was we basically picked one media thing each day. And besides that, I didn't really do anything athlete-wise. So I missed the athlete briefing entirely. I didn't go to the banquet. Didn't really take part in the expo a lot. It was like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday were media Taren and not really athlete Taren. And I just kind of trusted that it would be okay and I'd be able to figure things out while missing the athlete briefing, while missing the banquet and all that stuff. So I tried my best to rest a lot in those few days. It was tough because I'm carrying around 30 pounds of camera gear and podcasting equipment from one podcast to another, and more the stress of figuring out the logistics of, okay, I've got to be with Lucy Charles at this time, and then I have to make sure that I end that so that I can get over to this. That's kind of stressful.
Hey, speaking of which, do you want to share which podcasts, which pros you interviewed? I know you kind of showed it a bit on.
Well,
the
it's all in
channel.
the videos. So Lucy Charles and Ben Canute and Emma Pallant.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So those will be coming up.
Yes. So we tried to keep the work to a minimum during the day, maybe being from about 11 a.m. or noon until 4 or so. And before that and after that was resting. So that's how we tried to break it up.
Your Wi-Fi connection was
Sucky.
crap.
That sucked.
I didn't hear from you much.
No. Well, I'm also busy.
Well, I was not a happy wife.
Well, we only overlapped being awake for about 4 hours
That's
each
true.
day.
I'd be sitting
and
at my
you were
desk.
at work.
I know. I'd be sitting at my desk at work, and I'd get, okay, love you, good night, at 3 p.m. I'm like, oh, okay, bye.
Yeah.
Actually, love you, good afternoon. See you.
That was not subtle one day. We're like, oh, who are you? I'm like, yeah, the guy that's on the other side of the
I
world,
know.
7 time zones away with no Wi-Fi.
Well, crap Wi-Fi. Okay, so let's talk about that women's race. It looked from the video like it was a nice day.
Very nice day, about 21 degrees.
Like almost slightly better day than the men's race because it was pretty overcast at the end of your race.
Nah, I would actually say that we had a better day.
Oh.
We were overcast the entire time. We were about 16 to 19 degrees Celsius, so 62 to 69 Fahrenheit. We had no wind. The girls had a big headwind going out. They had a fair bit more sun. They had no rain. We had little mists of rain.
Okay. So the swim start, the women took an odd
and
line.
the women had a really different water than we did. The girls, a lot of them had to put like neoprene caps on because it was 15 degrees Celsius.
Like the swim cap?
Yeah, 60
don't you have
degrees
to?
Fahrenheit. No, like a neoprene cap that covers their ears and everything, like a warming cap.
Oh.
And it warmed up to 19 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit overnight for us. So like for us, it was perfect. But in their case, they were battling chilly waters.
Interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
Okay,
But it
so
warmed up that much in one day.
they appeared to take an odd line off the start.
Yeah, Heather Wortell told me this. So she was lined up on the far right of the start line, and she said that was the better line to take. And she had Daniela Ryf, I think, 2 athletes to the left of her, and she assumed
There's your barometer.
that
She's
everyone,
picking the right spot, Daniela Ryf.
Yeah, well,
if she's on the right side, probably you should be on the right side.
But, however, Heather Wortell was expecting a lot of the athletes to veer right when the gun went because it was a running beach start. And what happened is everyone ran to the left, which ended up making the course longer. So I don't know why that happened. I'm thinking back, I wonder if Lucy Charles was far on the left and everyone was trying to get on her feet. I can't remember where she was lined up, but a lot of the athletes took a bit of a different line down those buoys.
So speaking of Lucy and her swim,
it's awesome. Wow. It's incredible. She was a pool swimmer. And what we found out in the podcast is she then went into open water marathon swimming, 10K races in open water, which take a little over 2 hours, kind of like the time equivalent of the Olympic marathon. And she never ended up making it to the Olympics, and just 4 years ago did her first race. And obviously being such an awesome swimmer with open water swim skills, she comes out of these races easily ahead of everyone else. And she came out, I want to say 2 minutes ahead of the main pack. And the main pack in these races is now ITU athletes who are some of the best swimmers around, and she's still 2 minutes ahead of them, not having anyone else to work with. Whereas these main packs are cycling through where somebody will take the lead for a little while, can drop back. Somebody else can take the lead for a while, can drop back. And even though that group of athletes is some of the best swimmers out there that are working together to be fast, Lucy Charles is still 2 minutes faster than them. So it's incredible to see how far ahead she comes out.
but it was a fast swim pack. Period.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think something was with the currents that I know certainly with our race for the men and maybe for the females as well, but the swim times as a whole were about 3 to 5% faster for the men. I was about 10% faster. So I touched base with Jerry Rodriguez, the swim coach that I'm working with Tower 26, and he said, good race or good swim, Taren. Proud of you. You did good. Everyone was a little bit faster, but to be 10% faster is pretty exceptional. So I was happy with that. But he just said, like, as a whole, it was a very fast swim. So I don't know. It was actually pretty wavy for both races, but
no sharks, but dolphins.
No sharks, but there were dolphins for the men's race. And I don't know if the currents, just the way that bay works, maybe it helps you on the way out and a little bit on the way back.
Were you scared about sharks?
Not at all. No, just by odds. There's lots of other people to eat.
They don't like gingers.
Yeah. Ooh, it tastes spicy.
So then they get out of the water, and they get on the bike, because that's what happens when you get out of the water in a triathlon. You get on the bike.
Yep. Swim, bike, run.
So Daniela, Lucy, go. They go. Zoom, zoom, bikes.
So Lucy is going to, as long as she races, Daniela is going to be coming out in front of her, and Daniela is going to have to chase. And
Always?
Basically, I'm going to say yes. With the strength that Lucy has in the water, I don't think that anyone, besides maybe Lauren Brandon, maybe Laurence Delisle, has the guns to swim with Lucy. So Daniela is going to be chasing, and she chased and passed her at, I don't know what distance marker this was, but right around an hour 14 into the race. But the difference between this race and other races was that Lucy ended up staying on Daniela's wheel for the entire duration of the race. And that, I think, is a really big sign of how Lucy Charles is still so young in the sport, just being 24 years old, 4 years into triathlon, that she is still getting faster every single year. Last year in Kona, at the 40 kilometers to go mark, Daniela went off like crazy, time trialed the bike coming into transition 2 and broke everyone. Nobody could go with her, including Lucy Charles. And in this case, she didn't break her. She couldn't break her.
Yeah, but it was a shorter bike course. It's half the distance of the bike course.
It's a shorter bike course, but that also means that that's less time. That means that Daniela Ryf can go faster with less detriment. I mean, fast is still fast is fast.
But I was just meaning she had less time to have to hold the speed.
Yeah. Lucy has less time to have to hold the speed, but Daniela also has less time for extra speed to do damage to her legs. So whether it's a 40K ride or a 180K ride, fast is still fast.
So that bike, it ended up being Daniela versus Lucy because
they came off the bike together going into T2. Yeah.
Right. But then Heather.
And it was a tough bike. I'll say, commenting on the bike, the road surface was pretty chattery. And what I found is instead of putting out extra effort and that extra effort resulting in extra speed, it was like extra effort only resulted in a small incremental gain in speed. So while I put out an effort that was an average of 37 kilometers an hour in the race, it felt like a 40 kilometer an hour effort because there was effort just to keep the speed and stay on the road because you're getting chattered around so much. So those girls worked hard.
So then, but it was basically a 2-woman race because you had the ladies pack sort of clustered together after that. And, Heather Bertel, her legs were flat, apparently.
Yeah, Heather said that normally she would have biked basically through the group that she went with. She would have biked through Emma Pallant, Jeannie Seymour, dropped them, probably got close up to Daniela Ryf almost by herself, but instead she came off the bike with Emma Pallant, Jeannie Seymour, and Ellie Salthouse. I think they came off side by side. So you had Lucy Charles and Daniela Ryf in the front, and then those 4 ladies chasing.
And then Sarah True had a
Sarah
flat
True
tire.
flatted. Yeah, not a lot of people know that. They just said, "Oh, Sarah True fell off," and I saw in the live feed that they said, oh, that can happen in Ironman racing. Everything's going really well. And then all of a sudden you get knocked off the back of the group. Well, she got knocked off because she had a flat
tire. Huh.
Yeah.
So they got off the bike, and then on the run, it was a bit of a dogfight, but Ryf just said, see ya, Luce.
Yeah. Yeah. What it looked like looking at the splits is that for maybe 3 to 6 kilometers, I couldn't see exactly where it was because I wasn't watching the live feed. It was very intermittent, but it looked like somewhere in those first 6 kilometers that the pace picked up aggressively, really aggressively. And they were both trying to break each other. And in the end, Daniela Ryf broke Lucy Charles. And it got down to, I want to say, like a 3:20 kilometer for a while. And we saw that Daniela Ryf, while she got challenged a lot more from Lucy Charles than she ever has before, for deeper into the race than she ever has before, that Lucy Charles still isn't quite there on the run. And she's got to build that running callousing in her legs.
So yes, it was a dogfight. Ryf broke. Speaking of breaks, her zipper broke.
Yes.
So there was tons of questions.
Everyone's losing their mind
how
about
come
this.
There's rules about this? How come her zipper's so far down? It got asked many times in the comments on your YouTube channel, on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. People were asking like, why is she allowed? What is this? This is a rule for everybody else, but not for the top pros. No, it's a rule.
Because the rule is that your zipper can't be down past your sternum. Mm-hmm. It has to be zipped up. Well, Daniela Ryf's zipper broke, and there's actually a moment in our YouTube video where you can see that it's unzipped up, and the only thing that was holding it was the zippy zip thing at the very top of her
What's
zipper.
That thing called?
I don't know.
Grommet?
Latch? A grommet? The latch, the dangly thing that you hold.
It's got a name.
It was zipped. It was still tied. It was still connected at her neck, but everything else was knocked down. So yeah, her zipper broke. And how would you I don't know, that would be, I think if you were Ironman, you got to make a call and say like, look, the zipper broke. It's not like she is willfully ignoring the rules.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just people had a lot of questions about that, and they were kind of ticked. Like,
oh yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, the best races of the day, obviously Ryf, Charles, Jeannie Seymour had a great race. It was a breakout
race for Jeannie, yeah.
And a breakout race for Anne Haug. How do you say that, Haug?
I think it's Anne Haug.
Anne Haug.
It's German. I would say that was probably the performance of the day relative to where she was expected. She has had a really good 18 months of racing, Anne Haug. Won a lot of races. I think she won Oceanside and one other race. Can't remember what it was. Best runner in the field, had the fastest half marathon of the day, but nobody knew if she could show that on the world stage against the best in the world.
Where did our new pal Danielle Dingman finish?
Danielle Dingman, she finished 19th.
Pretty good.
19th.
Pretty good for her.
She wanted to, in a perfect world, be top half, and I think she was right there.
Excellent. Okay.
Notes.
So that's the women.
That's the women.
Daniela Ryf killed it, as everyone expected. She's probably going to kill Kona. We'll see if Lucy Charles keeps up to her there. Oh, you don't think she's going to kill Kona?
It's going to be hard for anyone to
catch her. Mel Hochschild.
Oh
yeah, so that was a question actually. That was not in my notes. Meant to ask. You did answer it in one of your videos about where the heck was she, because people were asking, and she wasn't even in this race.
Yeah, Australian Mel Hochschild, who I think is one of the best challengers to Daniela Ryf, and I've done a video about that. You can search for it, so I'll save you everything. She didn't show up, didn't even come.
She got injured.
She got injured, yeah. So I messaged her and asked if she wanted to comment on it at all, and she said that she got injured doing Half-Ironman Cebu and had to walk a little bit, I believe it was, on the half marathon. And she said she didn't want to come to the Half-Ironman World Championships and risk digging a hole and not being ready for Kona, because I think she's a 2-time winner of the Half-Ironman World Championships. Like, she won her first 2 cracks at it, literally like 18 months after taking up triathlon. So she's won it already. And the only thing left for her to win is Kona. So she's putting all her eggs in the Kona basket.
Smart.
Yeah.
Smart, disappointing though not to get to see her race against Ryf.
She seems to be in good spirits about it.
Okay.
Yeah. She didn't seem to be upset about it at all. I think it was more like, well, kind of sucks, but Kona's more important. That's what I take out of it.
Okay. On to the men. On to the gentlemen's race.
Good race.
So you aside, the other people that everyone's wondering about, as we already talked about, you actually had kind of perfect conditions for the race, so that's good to know. The top 3 matchup. I mean, we talked about this already a little bit too. Jan Frodeno, Alistair Brownlee, Javier Gomes. That's like so stacked. I was so excited to see the finish of that. I was sad I actually couldn't stay up and watch it. I would like to have seen it happen live, but I mean, there wasn't too much of a contest because Javier ended up cramping hardcore, and there was.
I would actually say it was a really good contest.
Oh,
unbelievable! Like the competitiveness of that race is probably unlike anything we've ever seen.
I wanted to see them, all 3 of them, closer at the finish line, though. I mean,
okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So, but backing that up, so prior to the race, one of the things, we had it was really cool because the pro panel was really exciting to see all of the, many of the world's top Ironman athletes in a row at that table, men and women. It was really cool, except the one, giant missing face there was Jan Frodeno.
That's right. Jan Frodeno. So I'm going to go out on a bit of a controversial limb here. So Jan Frodeno did not show up, as far as I can tell, to really any media appearances. And it started with the pro panel. James Kunama, local Ironman athlete, pro triathlete, he had to take the place of Jan Frodeno, and what he
in the panel,
and what I believe Jan said, this isn't directly from his people, but this is what was told to us as the media, was that he had a prior commitment, and it had something to do with not yet being in town because a flight was delayed or something like that. Now, a little birdie told me that they actually flew in with Jan either that morning or the day before, so that Jan
he actually was in town.
Jan, maybe. I'm not going to say for sure. Nobody really saw him. I'm just kind of piecing this together from what I was told from this person and that person. And then later in the week, instead of him doing more media events or anything like that, he was made, I'm doing air quotes here, you can't see in the podcast, but he was made available for media. But what he did was he did a private interview with, I think, his Oakley team, and they transcribed his interview and then released the B-roll of Jan. So nobody really had access to him.
Okay, that's junk. No, actually, I'll play devil's advocate.
Okay.
I mean, yes, that's kind of irritating. Everybody else showed up. Daniela Ryf showed up, and she was the clear top seed for the women and highly sought after. Everybody wanted to talk to her, et cetera, and she was available, and she was at the pro panel. No reason Jan couldn't have been there. However, I mean, this is a big year for him, this race, and then this one leading into Kona. Maybe he just felt for him that the focus could not be, his focus couldn't be scattered. It had to be just in one place, and doing media was going to scatter it too much. I mean,
everyone else has the scattered media.
Yeah, so but maybe everybody else is better at it.
But everyone else doesn't really have a choice, I think.
So how did he get the choice?
I don't know. Okay. I don't know. I think that considering it's draining. It's draining on just about everyone. It's draining to do the press conferences. The more of these pros that we get to know, they say that they have to really balance the week leading up to it, and not take on, well, I'm on the other side, but not take on too many media obligations.
No, but like you did before your race, you let Mel handle most of everything. You rested
but
as much as possible.
I was the media instead of being
right. But I'm talking about the same amount of time. If you spent 4 hours being media, they would be spending 4 hours having to deal with the media.
Getting media'd. Yeah.
Right. So same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But if that is the case, that he was there, that he was available, and he just decided to not basically play the game as everyone else does, which I think is very important to Ironman, that people want to see. Like, it's important to the sport. It's important to Ironman the corporation.
It's like
because
a new emerging thing, actually, that there are these faces that are the famous people in the race, because everybody knows if you follow the NBA, you've got a favorite. You know, is it Steph Curry? Is it LeBron? Whoever, you've got a favorite. If you follow the NHL, you know, your guys, Sidney Crosby, you care about your teams because of the people. Well, if they want people to care about Ironman, they need to care about the athletes. And if the best guy out there is not participating, that's not good.
Yes, that's a detriment to the sport and to Ironman, the corporation, because as we see with our YouTube channel, with our podcast, with the Instagram, there is a frenzy of people wanting to consume content about the event leading into it. Mm-hmm. And if the biggest name in the sport isn't helping to contribute to any content about it, there is less content out there and less traffic out there for people to come and start feeling like they are part of the event. And I think that is the part that, if it is the case that that's what happened, that's disrespectful because it's not good for the sport.
Well, you know, when you think, you know, I guess you can't compare it to the NBA and NHL, even though I just did, because those guys are on your television most nights of the week. You can access them and their games all the time. However, with triathlon, the races are few and far in between. Up until Ironman started broadcasting the races on Facebook, you couldn't watch a race. Mm-hmm. So how are you supposed to get favorite people if they're not there to be on camera for media things? I guess it's not unlike golf, where, like, do you ever see Tiger dipping out of an interview? Even in the worst of times, Tiger was always in his interviews, you know, and like all these other guys seemingly gladly take on the media, and it's the same kind of stress. It's the same kind of, you know, they only play golf in the big majors and in the big tournaments every so often. So I think that's probably the closest comparison sport wise. And yeah, I mean, I wonder, it'll be interesting to see what happens in Kona with Jan. How available is he going to be? Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine that they would let him not be part of the pro panel in Kona. Not a chance.
Well, he also wouldn't be risking coming. If he were to say on Wednesday or Thursday before Kona, oh, sorry, I'm not on the big island yet, people would be like, that's BS, Jan. Yeah. You've been here for forever.
Right.
So yeah, you wouldn't be able to pull that.
You could come up with any other kind of excuse. It wouldn't have to be a non-availability thing because of a flight, but
and you know what? I think that we should probably shelve this because we don't even know for a fact that this is what happened.
No, I will just close it by saying if he was allowed to not be part of the 70.3 pro panel, that sort of demeans that race to say it wasn't important enough to make him do that one. I don't know. Anyway. Okay. So he's an amazing athlete, however, and we can't dispute that. And he was lining up on the beach, getting ready for the swim. And one of the other top seeds, Alistair Brownlee, one of the people that people were dying to see race in this race against Jan and against Javier Gomes, Alistair and Jan, opposite sides of the beach.
Yeah. So this kind of leads into what I think might have been happening, that if Jan did in fact dip out of the pro panel, a lot of the media events, I wonder if it was like head games, or I don't want to see Allistair whatsoever until we come side by side in a race. Maybe it's something like that, because the morning of Jan, he acknowledged Jan, or he acknowledged Javier. They gave a little fiver.
Who Alistair did, or Jan?
Jan acknowledged Javier. Alistair was 26 places down in transition, and I don't know if they acknowledged each other at all before the race started. And then lining up on the beach, Alistair was as far to one side as he could be, and Jan was about as far to the other side as he could be.
And where was Javier in that?
Javier was fairly close to Jan.
Do they have beef?
I don't know. I don't know if they have beef or if Jan looked at Alistair more as the threat. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So in the head start, Jan's goggles come off.
Yeah, that was actually pretty funny to see. I was watching it, and the beach run start, you go in, you dive under the water, and just a small little thing that I wanted to point out was that his goggles come off. I think all he had was the Tier socket rocket goggles, so a real minimal goggle that isn't meant to stay on in the worst scenarios possible. Dives in, and then I see him stand up, and everyone's racing out, and he had the composure to just stand up, replace his goggles, do another dolphin dive, adjust his goggles a little bit again, and obviously worked out. He came out second in behind Ben Canute coming into T2, into T1. But that was just kind of a funny thing that I snickered at when I saw it happen.
And the swim was kind of like ITU pack-ish.
Very much. You basically had a straight pace line of 2 people, followed by 2 people, followed by 2 people, followed by 2 people. And Ben Canute and Jan Frodeno were out front, and it was just one big pack.
So they get out of the water and, again, get on the bike. That's what happens in a triathlon.
You really like that joke, eh?
I do. I have to use all my jokes as many times as possible. Okay, so yeah, getting on the bike. Clearly, Alistair wanted to try to crack it by 50K, but that did not work.
Yeah, what Alistair had said is he wanted to break up the pack by 50 kilometers. And instead, what happened was the blazing pace that Alistair set was just answered by everyone else. Ben Canute, Jan Frodeno would be the strongest athletes in that front pack. Ben Canute, Jan Frodeno, and I think particularly Sam Appleton, who is probably the most underrated triathlon cyclist out there. The guys beat Andrew Starkowitz in a race on the bike. And people don't look at Sam as one of the strongest cyclists out there, but he legitimately is. So Jan Frodeno, Sam Appleton, Ben Canute, they go to town and just push the pace and push it and push it and push it. And apparently, I haven't seen this, I haven't seen the footage, but throughout all of that, even though Javier Gomes kept up in that group, apparently he did not take a single turn at the front. And for those who don't know, you've got to keep, I can't remember if it's 11 or 13 meters in between you and the person in front of you, but at that point, you're saving somewhere around 2 to 4 watts. So the entire time that the bike is happening, Javier did not take a turn at the front, and Jan and Sam Appleton come off the bike into T2 together. It was intense.
Sounds intense.
Yeah, they hammered it.
So Alistair went out hard, but he faded, and I guess was there some question that he'd have the endurance, or?
Well, I think that the question with Alistair right now is that he doesn't have a lot of miles in his legs because he's been injured. And that's been my question about Alistair since he's moved up to long distance racing, that he has a real history of injuries. So he won in St. George, Utah at the beginning of the year. And as I'm saying this, I feel like I might be confusing that with last year. But I think he won in St. George, Utah last year. Can't remember. But he's been injured, and he finished 4th in the European Championships in a race that he really should have won, but he didn't. And the question was, it's never about, is Alistair fast enough? Because he's probably the fastest runner in triathlon for men. But did he have enough miles in the legs to be fast for 21.1 kilometers? And he went out blazing fast, like crazy breakneck speed. I think it was brought down to 5-minute miles or sub 5-minute miles. And he took the lead only to fade at, I want to say it was kilometer 3, 4. It really didn't take long until Jan passed him very decisively.
Where's his brother?
Where's his brother? He's still racing ITU.
I wonder if he'll move up.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's got less.
He has less competition now that his brother's moved up.
Yeah, well, I think he's got less chance of injury. I think Alistair is more injury prone. But I don't know. Maybe Johnny is young. Well, I know Johnny's younger, and maybe he's still just focusing on the next Olympics.
Interesting.
Could be that.
So Jan was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. He was just amazing. He went out front against runners that he was 1 or 2 minutes slower than in ITU. How is he doing this? He's a robot.
I was pretty astounded by that. In the last few years of Jan's ITU career, he was getting pummeled, and like relatively, I'll say pummeled, by Javier Gomes and Allistair Brownlee. Like they were running 29.5-minute 10Ks, and Jan was coming in at 30 and a half, 31, 10K. Like he wasn't even in sight of their run speed. And when it came down to the run, I assumed that Javier Gomes was the clear favorite because he's got the run durability, like he's got the miles in his legs that Allistair doesn't, and the speed that Jan doesn't. However, Jan goes out, takes the lead at about kilometer 4 or 5, and holds it for the entire race. Runs a 1:06 half marathon, which here locally, for 40 some years of our Manitoba Marathon, the all-time course record is, I think, a 1:07:30. And that's just a half marathon. Jan runs faster than that after swimming and biking. And he said in an interview afterwards that he hoped his endurance would hold up. So maybe that's why Jan has been so good, because while he might not have that greasy fast speed that Allistair...
I don't know, he sounds greasy fast to me.
Well, like the greasy fast speed in like a sprint triathlon or an Olympic distance triathlon, he's got really good speed, like 99% good speed, but he can also hold it.
What's his size like compared to Allistair's?
He's a big man.
Right,
He's
because Allistair, and I've only ever seen him on TV, but he looks light.
Wiry.
He's wiry. He's like frail, not frail. But no, he looks like a small dude, like a skinny, not super tall dude. And then you've got Jan, who's like, he doesn't look like a triathlete.
I want to say Jan is 6'2", 6'4".
Yeah.
Big guy.
Right.
Lots of moving parts there.
So,
but he
and
runs well.
A lot more body weight to carry.
Not a ton. I mean, there's nothing to him.
Well, but longer limbs, more bones.
Yeah.
Longer bones.
Yeah. Yeah. But he held it, ran past Allistair, and then Javier came up on his shoulder, ran just behind him, never once passed, just like on the bike, never once passed. And there is a little bit of drafting effect in running too when they're running that
so you think
fast,
that was purposeful?
especially. Yeah, I thought that Javier was basically just biding his time and was going to pass him at the end, because Javier would be fresher coming off the bike, fresher in the run. And instead of eventually passing him, Jan broke him and broke him bad. I've never seen Javier walk, and he walked, had a side stitch, like basically stopped to stretch it out. Oh yeah.
Poor Javier.
Yeah. So the dominance of Jan in this race, which wasn't like, it's not a namby-pamby kind of race. These guys are fighting tooth and nail, beating the crap out of each other kilometer after kilometer. And when they're side by side, that just does nothing but push the pace to unbelievable levels that you either win or you bust. And for Jan to be the guy that won, I think is pretty incredible.
So it took Jan only a year to win 70.3, but it took him 2 years to win Kona after moving into the long distance. What do you think that means?
Well, I think that says more about where Javier is. That I think Javier, he's got the potential to be one of the best long course athletes in the world because he's so fast at the shorter distances. He's more muscular. He's not wiry like Allistair. He doesn't really have a history of injury, so I think he's a little bit more resilient. But for one reason or another, Javier wasn't able to step up to the longer distances like Jan was and be as dominant as quickly. And what happened with Jan was when he went to Kona the first time, he showed that he had talent, but he broke in Kona. He blew up and had to walk a fair bit of the marathon. And I like to think that Javier might have as much potential, probably has as much potential, but the fact that he's breaking going against Jan, and in his first crack at it, lost his first full crack at a full distance Ironman race. He lost to Brandon Curry. For one reason or another, Jan is showing more dominance and has shown more dominance at the longer distances earlier on, whereas Javier is seeming to have a fair bit of a learning curve that he's suffering through. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I'm
pulling for Javier. You've always liked
Kona?
him.
I like him because he's built like me.
Yeah, you've always liked him.
He's wider. Yeah.
Well, and I'd only seen pictures of him, and then you guys went to the pro panel, and Javier was on the panel. That guy's got great hair.
Mel said that. Mel said in person, Javier Gomes is dreamy.
He is dreamy.
And then she saw him.
I didn't want to say it first,
and then
but
she
now
saw him,
you've said it.
Then she saw him close up and was like, no, too skinny.
What? Well, he's dreamy and he's got great hair, so I hope he wins. That's my criteria. Anyway.
Well, her husband, Jay, is curmudgeon-y and wears great hats.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe that's what she's into.
Well, clearly that's what she's into.
She likes curmudgeons and people who wear hats really well.
All right. Anyway, so Jan and Allistair, well, Allistair overperformed based on what you thought he was going to. Javier underperformed. Hopefully we'll see him have a better race in Kona. And then Peter Hamerick.
Yeah.
Hamerick?
I think so.
Was the hero of the day.
I'd say so. Yeah, finishing
Save some
fifth,
cats
sixth,
from a tree.
fourth, fifth, sixth, I want to say. I've never heard of this guy.
Oh.
Never heard of him.
That's why he was a hero.
And for him to come off the bike in the main pack, be part of that bike pack that pushed everything out there in the race and hold on in the run, really impressed.
We're going to get a bunch of messages.
Breakout.
Every time you talk about a race in an area of the world that you're not familiar with and you
people
mispronounce
hate
someone's
it.
name.
Don't you know Julio Mendez from Cartagena? Like, no, I've never heard of Julio.
Right. So now everybody's going to comment saying, "What do you mean you don't know who
you
Peter
don't know
Hamerick
Peter?
is?
Yeah, don't
What's
know.
wrong with you?"
Never heard of him.
Yeah.
You can't, I've just never heard of the guy.
We can't know all the athletes, people. We just can't. Yet. Anyway. So takeaways. Keeps getting faster but can't fake it.
Yeah. Yep. Keeps getting faster. More ITU athletes coming in there. The Ben Knuts, the Jan Frodenos, the Javier Gomez's, the Alistair Brownlees, the Daniela Ryfs, all of these, Anne Haug, Sarah True, all of these ITU athletes coming in there that are amazing, is making the race so much more aggressive right from the start. That's how it's going to be. It's basically an Olympic distance race, but it's longer. But you can't fake it because it's not like you can just come in having not had a good buildup. You got to have to have that speed and a good buildup and be able to translate that speed to longer distances, where I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago, you could get away with just being faster.
Mm-hmm. Well, but this goes to support what you've been saying on the channel forever, which is start with shorter distances before you move up to the long distances. So what did these pros do? They started an Olympic distance.
They started with
sprints. ITUs did those for years until they were the best in the world. And now they've moved up.
Sam Appleton.
Case
Sam Appleton that had a phenomenal race, has been knocking at the door for a few years, still hasn't done a full Ironman.
Wow.
Has not even done one.
It's crazy. Nobody is clearly ready to unseat Ryf and Jan.
Nope. No, I don't. The only person that can beat Daniela Ryf is Daniela Ryf. If she gets injured or if she decides to retire, I think that's the only way that she is going to lose her crown.
With age, you slow down.
You slow down, but you also build endurance. So if she can hold her speed, but her endurance stays, I think it ends up, they play off of each other. And Jan, with his motivation being back on point after the shocker scenario that he had last year in Kona, I don't think anyone's ready to unseat him.
See, I kind of don't like that. I like a bit more of a race, that
This is a pretty good race.
No, I know. But I mean, it was sort of a foregone conclusion that those two were going to win.
No, I wouldn't say so on the men's. Certainly not on the men's. I definitely didn't pick Jan to win. Now I do.
Pick him forever for everything. Oh yeah. So then what about the Jan versus Lionel? Still Jan.
Still Jan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then finally, as we start to hit nearing the end here, this World Championship, as we talked about at the top, was in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. Next year it's in Nice, France. I mean, they're really moving it around the globe. And this was intended to provide unique courses, right, to the athletes. So it's not just the same old every year. Yeah,
it was a world-class event. As far as the event goes, everything that I said at the beginning is the complete polar opposite to how the event itself was. It was ran so well. The volunteers were phenomenal. I said that I missed the athlete briefing, so I didn't know where my transition bags went or where I was supposed to run. during transitions, and I was literally just figuring out the course and the transition as I was doing it in the race and yelling, "Where do I go? Where do I give the bag to?" And everyone along the way knew exactly what I needed to do. That was really reassuring and very astounding, and every
Not
last bit of
surprising
it was
about,
cool.
I mean, you've been saying this from the beginning, since before you did some non-Ironman branded races, and then you did your first Ironman branded race. It was like, oh, now I get it.
But apparently, so our buddy Talbot Cox, he said that Chattanooga last year was basically just like any other 70.3, nothing too special about it. But this one was
but it's a world
class.
championship.
Chattanooga was a world championship.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
welcome to 2017, NTK. Come on, keep up. I know we're new in the media here.
Well, I don't know all the races. I don't know Peter Hemmerich either. So you're expecting a lot from me.
It was world class. It was really good. And my former coach, Coach Pat, still good pals of ours, he messaged me because they went and biked on the course in Nice, France, which is where they are holding the 2019 Half-Ironman World Championships. And he said, it's just an outright road bike course. And I talked to the media guy that's in charge of media for Ironman, and he said, yeah, that's the point of this, because it's not in the same location like Kona is every single year. They can move it around and change the course and have different experiences, and it doesn't just have to be the Queen K biking the same course every single year. They can have some unique courses, so apparently we're in for a road bike race next year.
So you got to qualify now.
I do.
Get going.
We're going to try.
Get qualifying.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
That's it. Wrap it up
all
for
the
us.
Things. Oh, well, what you need to do, folks, is leave us not a comment.
No, we say that in the outro.
Right. We do. No, well, that's it. We have lots of great podcasts coming up in the next few weeks, as we mentioned earlier, with some of the folks that Taren interviewed at the race. So lots to look forward to there.
And we have Kona.
And we have Kona. Well, I guess that's a good point. That's 1 month from now for us to leave.
It is.
1 month is going to go fast.
So excited about that.
Oh, I can't wait to watch that race. I have not been so excited to watch a triathlon period ever as I am to watch this one, because
it's funny because I'm not in it.
Oh,
yeah.
It's very awkward. No, I mean, how could you ask for a more exciting field? And really, regardless of whether Jan is the clear favorite, I mean, everybody wants to know what Lionel's going to do. Everybody wants to see what some of these other athletes we've talked about, what they're going to do in the world championship of the biggest race, the biggest triathlon on the planet.
Patrick Lange, we're going to have another head-to-head matchup between Ryf and Lucy Charles.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, Sarah True is coming in for her first Kona. Oh, it's going to be good.
You can have an acai bowl. It's just endless. All right. Well, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for listening. We're so glad you tuned in. You're looking at me like I'm missing something.
Nope.
You're not? Okay. Thank you for listening to the Triathlon Taren Podcast. That's Triathlon Taren. I'm NTK, and we'll see you next time.